kept thinking that I needed to figure it out myself, right?
Right.
I'm the man, right? So like, yeah, toughen up, buttercup,
Yep.
and get down to it. And I couldn't find a way out, so I kept dragging people in. And unfortunately, in my path, I drug in female partnerships, right? And created even more devastation along the way doing that. I want to say in about my mid 20s, I had talking about the gift of desperation. I was desperate to stop fighting, but not in the way that saved my life in the end. I had
Mhm.
just signed that like a proverbial kind of contract in my mind that I'm just going to die using.
All right, welcome everybody to the Mental Health Show with Robert Grigore. I am your host, Robert Grigore. If this is the first time you have been introduced to me or the show, I am a registered clinical counselor, a certified EMDR therapist, as well as an approved EMDR consultant with the EMDR International Association, published author on EMDR and mental health. So quite a bit of experience in mental health. But the show is really designed to demystify, debunk, and to destigmatize mental health for our audience members to save you time, money, and unnecessary pain and struggling, and just help you move forward with your healing process faster because there's a lot of noise out there and we want to make things simple. So today I'm very excited. I have a wonderful guest with me here, and I want to extend a warm welcome and introduce Chad Barrett. Chad Barrett, manager of the Olives Branch Sober Living and Transitional Housing Program in Prince George, BC. Excited to have you here. He belongs to an amazing team of helpers all working together in the healing journeys of those they serve. So very excited to have you here, Chad. Welcome to the show.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me today, Robert. I'm excited to be here. It's always a gift to be able to talk recovery and get the word out that you know what this is possible for anyone anywhere. And I love the idea of debunking some myths because there's a lot of things that get in the way for folks, right?
A lot out there. I'm glad that you're as
Yeah.
excited as I am. So thank you. So again, I think if this is the first time you're tuning in to the show and you're not too sure, about my story, I won't go into crazy detail right now, but just essentially, I am a survivor of addiction in my life. I say that my first addictions was sugar and TV. And from there, it grew into alcohol and drugs and sex and pornography. And, it got pretty bad, and I spent even a little bit of time in jail. So I kind of been through a little bit of everything. I say that I've got some degrees and stuff, but my I think you said the same thing as well too, that the real teacher in life is experience and life's
Mhm.
ups and downs and everything. So I think it'd be great for our audience member to get who's tuning in to get a sense a little bit about your personal story. Like, how did you find your path into recovery, into it? Tell me a little bit about where you came from. Where did Chad come from?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Robert, I don't have any certificates on my wall, but the one that got me here was a doctorate in the School of Hard Knocks, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm no stranger to addiction and lived experience, right? A lot of and it's funny, I was reading your book too. I'm just going to throw this
Oh,
one out
thank
there,
you.
and just so many similarities, right? And that's what ended up getting me into recovery, I guess. In the end, spent a couple, just about 3 decades in active addiction, and it's funny you talk about sugar and TV, and really anything that would get me out of me right from knee high to a grasshopper is where that all started. And then it progressed, right? Because things work for a bit and then they wear out, just like drugs and alcohol worked as a really good band-aid for a bit, and then they didn't wear out or wear off until I got to a place of complete and total desperation, right? And I did a lot of, I'll say, a few attempts, right, through counseling and whatnot in very early. Well, I wasn't even in early recovery yet, but probably my mid stage of active addiction, and it wasn't for me, man. Like it just wasn't
Right. Yeah.
because I didn't know until later when I actually got into recovery that it wasn't for me because I wasn't ready for it to be for me.
Right.
Right. That's something I think we'll end up talking about a little bit later. Is is that we have to hit a certain bottom. Man, I hit a lot of bottoms, and I just found bigger, better picks to dig a little deeper with, right? Yeah,
Yes, yes. When you
yeah.
find yourself in a hole, sometimes you just keep digging, you
Keep
know,
digging.
by mistake. And then, okay, are you
Yeah,
feel comfortable sharing a little bit of that with only what you feel comfortable sharing? But because I think that's a place that we've heard about, like a rock bottom or something like that. But you know, one of our earlier guests talked about the gift of desperation, and sort of in this moment, you mentioned the word desperation, and so you hit this
yeah,
somehow. You must have hit something, and you go, now I'm ready for it. So, are you
yeah.
okay to share maybe a little bit about how you knew that you're ready?
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I had said already, I spent a few decades in active addiction, and that I was that guy that kept thinking that I needed to figure it out myself, right?
Right.
I'm the man, right? So like, yeah, toughen up, buttercup,
Yeah.
and get down to it. And I couldn't find a way out, so I kept dragging people in. And unfortunately, in my path, I drug in female partnerships, right? And created even more devastation along the way doing that. I want to say in about my mid 20s, I had talking about the gift of desperation. I was desperate to stop fighting, but not in the way that saved my life in the end. I had just signed that like a proverbial kind of contract in my mind that I'm just going to die using. That's
Okay.
just the way it is. So
Yeah.
I kept on going, and I kept on pulling people in. Right.
Mm.
Went through multiple jobs and a couple of I have two children from two separate moms, so obviously that tells you about my part,
Yeah.
right?
Well, sure. Yeah.
I didn't do a very good part in my part, and so those didn't work out. I ended up with a long-term marriage, who's now my ex, and I had this thing about me that I kind of I don't know if I coined the term, but I want to try to take credit for it. That I had white knight syndrome,
Okay.
right? And this goes right back to being a kid trying to fit
Mm.
in. I learned how to lie. I
Right.
still didn't do very good at it, but
Yeah.
that was my tool for success. I'm going to
Mm.
lie my way through everything because the
Yeah.
last thing I want to see is disappointment in your eyes. Last thing I want to hear is disappointment in their tone. And if I can avoid any kind of confrontation, I'll go to any lengths to do that. Right.
Beautiful.
So yeah, a lot of years of doing that, a lot of mess along the way. It was around my first experience with thinking about taking my own life was
Mm.
early teenage years because I felt so out of place then, right?
Right.
And just couldn't figure out how to become in place, how to become a part of the bigger puzzle. I was such a jagged piece myself,
Mm.
and so I carried that.
No.
I had good chunks of time where it didn't really enter my mind until I got too loaded and I was left all alone and stared at myself in the mirror and just disgusted with what I saw. Right.
Yes.
Um, I'll just kind of jump ahead. And my apologies, Robert. I normally offer this advice up to people to
Okay.
buckle in and put some headgear on when you're listening to me share sometimes because I bounce around a bit.
Yeah. Okay. And by the way, trigger alert too for people.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. That's okay.
So I'll just slingshot right up to when I actually did that whole surrender bit. I spent about the last 7 years of active addiction,
Mm.
kind of in and out of some recovery rooms. And again, just, it wasn't for me. Not that my story was worse than anybody's. It just wasn't going to work for me, is what I thought, right? So, but the problem was I didn't go a single day. And I say this, and I thought lots about it if I'm exaggerating or not, but there's no exaggeration with it. For about 7 years, not a day went by that I didn't think of taking my own life because I
Mm.
thought that was my way out. And that gift of desperation is I realized right at the last minute, man, that you know what, I don't really want to die. I'm just terrified on how to even learn how to live without using substances. didn't have a clue. 38 when I cleaned up, didn't have a clue. But the piece that really helped me is it also kind of opened my eyes that all of these in and out of different recovery rooms, I realized that every time I went back, those same people were still sitting there and they were living life through the ups, the downs, the all arounds, right? And continue to talk and share their experience on how they're doing it without using. And it finally clicked for me. It's like, man, these people can actually help me out if I allow it, right? If I
Mhm.
allow them to. So that was the beginning of what's become such a beautiful journey, my man.
Wow, wow. So it sounds like there was not a future template in your mind of what healing and what life in recovery could look like for you because you had sort of committed to this idea that I'm going to die using, and eventually you get to the point where you see people living how you want to live, and so it's like, well, maybe there's a possibility at that point. And I think what you shared here about this, there was yes, you were desperate, it sounds like, but there's also this deep-seated fear of not knowing how to live. And that was so I think there's a fear fear of life without that.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of people in addiction, and sometimes that's a real sticky point for people. It's a real tug of war because, what am I going to do if I don't have that? That's my break glass in case of emergency, security blanket. And now what? So I think that's, maybe we'll dive more into some resources and things that people can have near, maybe later. But I also want to circle back to what you said earlier. And thank you for sharing your experience, growing up a little bit about lies. And I think this is a really great important thing that people need to know that at least in my opinion, maybe you have a different one. We'll get what you believe later, I think, on this. But addiction is not like something that you catch out of nowhere. It's not like all of a sudden you got the flu and oh, there it was. It's like I've never met anybody, that, is like totally good. And then one day they wake up and say, today is a good day to become an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. Like there's a path forward, and you're hitting on these things down below. Like there's a fear, and I'm not going to turn this into a therapy session, I promise, but there's a little bit of an underlying fear there about oneself. If I see or if I see this disappointment on somebody, on my caregiver's face or whatever, whoever my mommy or daddy or whomever, and then there's a tone of disappointment, there's a negative belief that gets activated in us. And in your case, it's you, but it could be something else. If I disappoint mom and dad, maybe it means that I'm not good enough, or I'm worthless, or I'm not safe in the world, or whatever it might be. And that is a very, very uncomfortable place for a nervous system to be. And so then we find different ways of coping. And I say pulling a lever. And this
Yeah.
lever means now I feel better. For me, it was sugar and TV at first, and then it was, as I said, I went pretty far. Cocaine, alcohol. I kind of did a lot of things. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing. Because I think people need to know that it's not it's a process of how you get there, and
Yeah.
it's a whole body thing when you feel it.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Robert. I did a lot of work uh, on myself when I finally got into recovery, and because I realized that the broken me wasn't just broken over the last few years or the last decade. Like it was stuff from as far back as I could actually remember. And yeah, it just starts with that. I think I mentioned about that jagged puzzle piece, and
Mhm.
I'm a real visual kind of guy, right?
Yeah,
And that's been a big piece of helping me out in my own recovery, but just to visualize things. But it's yeah, to go back and see where it all started, where I didn't feel like I fit, and then taking the extra step to go, well, why was that,
yeah,
right? And that's what I really dug about your book, and just about the direction yourself that you
yeah.
take is, yeah, I didn't ask to live the life that I did, right? But what I am asking now is how can I not relive that? So I need to go back and I need to take a look at some pieces of me that weren't fitting right. And
Appreciate that. And this is scary stuff for people, right? Like
yeah,
this is not like we're gonna talk about sports today and like what do you
yeah,
like? about, such and such. This is like, we're talking trauma. We're talking,
Uh-huh.
life events that have caused people to have a lot of disturbance inside their nervous system. And when I say trauma, I don't mean necessarily what we all normally consider big T traumas, like your
Uh-huh.
car crashes or sexual assaults or something like that, which are obviously traumatic. Or I guess now lots of natural disasters we're seeing in our world, but it's the little T's as well. It's
Yeah.
the, like you said, disappointment and the face. Now, if you had one day, like I was bullied as a kid, if I got bullied one time, it was like fine, right? I was okay. I guess you had a
Uh-huh.
bad day, guy. Like, go like hug a tree or something. But for you and for me, like that over time, that repetition, right? So bullied, but you come home and there's disappointment. If you see that over and over and over and over and over again, now where it's beginning to really set in, and there's a deep-seated belief that gets activated. And so then, like, people say, like, I'm a blank, whatever that might be for them. So, I mean, I feel like we could dive into this a lot more, and I don't want to make it a therapy session, but I'm thank you for
Uh-huh.
going there and letting us see a little bit, because we're all people, and we're all nervous systems walking around this planet. And so to know that there is a story here, right? There's nothing wrong with you if you're listening to this and you are struggling with an addiction, or somebody struggling with addiction. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. You just had some stuff that happened to you, and we need to like help you change some patterns in life. So maybe we'll dive more into that. But I'm also curious about, how did you, Chad? How did you get interested in working? In the addiction field, there was sober living, and maybe we can talk too a little bit about Olive's branch and give people an understanding of what it is and that you do. But how did that path happen?
So funny you ask. And it's a funny story now, not so much back in the day, but I actually remember, I don't know, numerous times being, in active addiction, out of my mind, but actually sitting back, well, man, Chad, if you could just get your sheep in a row, and I said it differently then,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You
you
swear
could
in this one. It's fine.
you could actually help people, right? And because here's the thing, and I just want to touch, and I don't want to drag this out too much either, because you got a direction to take us. But going back to that, being good people, I'm a firm believer, man. Like, I am such a firm believer that each and every one of us is a golden soul,
Hmm.
is where we start, and then life happens, right? And
Yes.
more blankets of life, and then
That.
if we ever get to that desperation part of actually checking into some help, we can start peeling off those layers and get
Hmm.
back to where we're supposed to be. So with that in mind, that's I always I always knew or believed that I was a good person.
Hmm.
I was too scared to show it because it wasn't going to fit in with the jocks. It wasn't going to fit in with the heads. It wasn't going to
Right.
fit in with anybody,
Uh,
right? And so I just hit it. I hit it and I stuffed it and I did whatever I needed to do to fit. And yeah,
hmm.
so
Oh, I love that.
so
What you're saying is there's a thing that I do with my clients, describe about their true self. Like underneath of it all, like at your very core, you call it like your golden soul. That's why it really resonated with me. Is I think we all have this authentic self, the real you, the real us that's underneath of it. And then I talk about, trauma blankets sort of being placed on you. And so life problems, stressors, situations, these are things that happen to us, and it can really weigh us down and make us not see what really is underneath of
yeah.
that blanket. So you knew that you're this golden soul, and you're too afraid to show it, and then something happened that allowed you to say, okay, I'm gonna show it. Where did that how did that happen?
So that didn't happen till many years later when I actually got into recovery and just working with some other men in my life and I took some counseling. A short story on this one maybe later if we have time, but I took some counseling right in early recovery because, well, like I said earlier, I'm desperate and I'm willing now because I see these
Yeah.
other people that are doing what's necessary. So now I'm finally willing to. I can't say it doesn't work if I don't actually try it. Right?
Yes.
Didn't know I liked Brussels sprouts till I tried them. Right?
Very
Oh,
good.
yeah,
Okay.
not bad, not bad. So I don't even know where it was. I think it's kind of the same. I share the same thing with a lot of people that get into early recovery. It's like I'm feeling good. I'm starting to see some changes in my. I want to save the friggin' world. right?
Yes.
That's my
Yes.
destiny. So
Yes.
I did, I felt that. And but the way I went about it was I got involved with belonged to 12-step recovery. So I got involved with that fellowship and really involved, right? I heard, and I'll throw this one out there to anybody who's listening, it's harder to fall off the edge if you get in the middle of the plate, right?
Oh, yes.
So I got in the middle and I learned what it felt like to actually get out of me and help somebody else, to be a part of something. Through that process, I, started to shave off those jagged edges to my puzzle piece, and who knew eventually I would fit my own puzzle and then start to fit the bigger puzzle, right? And so I want to say it was probably about 3 years into recovery, and I really started thinking about helping, like getting into it as a profession. And my problem was money, right? It's like
Mm,
I'm kind of moving up a little bit in the field that I was in, and I had fear. Like I'm a guy that come in here, big burly man, but I was so full of fear about everything, right? And finances was one of them. So
yeah.
so I held off and I held off and I held off, and then finally about 5 years into it, I thought, well, you know what? Well, I didn't think. I did a lot of praying to the God of my understanding, not a religious throw out to anything, but spiritual guy here.
Yeah.
And and I took the plunge and I quit my one job and I took a significant financial hit and got my foot into a treatment facility
Mm,
around my local area just as a starter position, right? I was the night, and unfortunately that only lasted about 6 months. Their clientele base dropped and I was the last one hired, first one gone.
okay.
So I went back into my other uh, profession and stayed there for I want to, another 4, just about 5 years.
Wow.
And then I had a beautiful man in my life that I've known for a decade plus now. But he was the guy who said, Chad, you know what, man, you got something to offer, like you really do. So we did a lot of talking. He was my mentor in a lot of ways, and so I took the plunge again, and and I haven't turned back ever since. Right? It just keeps progressing as I go. I heard it said a long, long time ago, if you ever find a job that you love, you'll never work another day again in your life.
Yes.
And as much work as this can be sometimes,
Yes.
I truly haven't worked another day since I left my last profession. Right? It's
Beautiful.
yeah,
That's the difference for me. I usually compare motivation and inspiration. They're two different things. And motivation is a fear-based thing. I'm running away from this bear or this tiger. I got to get away. And then inspiration is you're pulled to something. And it's like if I'm inspired, I almost can't not do whatever it is that I'm inspired to do. I just have to, and then it somehow
yeah,
manifests itself. So I really appreciate that. And I think that having a
yeah,
mentor is such a valuable thing in life, to have, because we're
yeah,
social creatures. We're not meant to do this stuff by ourselves. We're supposed to be in groups. We're supposed to have
yeah.
support and have somebody ahead that's either done it before or they somehow can push in the right direction. I think that's really, really, really terrific.
Mhm.
There is a study or a survey done that I want to recommend, because I think, like, people listening in, there's it takes a lot of guts to get into a treatment center of some sort, right? And
Yeah,
to start the journey of recovery, like I remember looking at it like, oh, I can't be like that,
uh-huh.
and I've had the honor of interviewing two people now, so far in the field, and some of the places that people get to in order to decide that finally I'm ready to get in there. There was a study or a survey done with 855 people in Canada that are 18 plus. And this is a few years back now. And one of my guests had talked about it. So we'll link it in the show notes for people. But it's by the Canadian Center on Substance Use and Addiction. And it's called Life in Recovery from Addiction in Canada. So it's a big survey. A lot of people in Canada talking about, what got them into recovery, what's kept them into recovery, like what are some relapse factors and things like that. So I just want to, point out to some of the things that people are saying at that point before they get into a recovery. And I think the addiction treatment and recovery are two different things too, that we can, spell it out a little bit. But before joining a treatment center, A lot of people often say that they're really struggling, they're almost near death, quite often. Like you said, they're
Mhm.
possibly, you said you've thought about suicide over and over and over and over again. Somebody said that I was miserable and broken. I didn't want to live anymore, and I was a slave to alcohol. Every aspect of my life was in turmoil because of my addiction. And somebody else said it's a crossroads, either death or recovery.
Yeah.
It's like one or the other. If I don't do this, I'm going to die. And this is such a very, strong contrast to get people into a treatment center. And I want to talk a little bit about what keeps people into recovery. But to do that, I want to learn a little bit more about Olive's Branch. I think, we've
Uh-huh.
said the name a couple of times here, and I think that people that are tuning in are probably curious. Like, what is that? I like olives. Like, what are we
Yeah.
talking about here exactly? So can you talk a little bit about Olive Branch and yeah, tell us what we need to know.
Absolutely. So the Olives Branch is like your introduction in the very beginning. We're a sober living facility and transitional program, right? So the whole idea behind the Olives Branch is, and I want to make sure I throw this one out just to be very clear, we are not a treatment facility.
Right.
However, we are a sober living and transitional facility, and we're pre and post treatment. So we have people come in right from the streets, from detox, self referred, I mean, from all over, right? And what it is, it's a safe place where we don't allow any using whatsoever, hence the sober living
Right.
hitch, right?
Yeah.
Um, but the other piece of it is uh, something that's lost and really difficult, and actually we'll touch more on this later too with some other myths, but the idea of being it's about structure, right? I didn't have, even though, I always had a job and I paid my bills and I always had a home and everything throughout active addiction. It was all a mess, and that's a bigger story too.
Mhm.
But there was no structure, no real framework for life, and that's what we try to help people find, right? Is to
Mhm.
offer structure. We do 5 days a week. We do programming a couple times a day in the morning and in the afternoon. And it's nothing heavy like your full time treatment facility.
Okay.
However, we help people get into the mainstream of recovery life to start with. Because the idea is to eventually, the idea is to eventually get out into the mainstream of community life.
Right.
And right, so another really beautiful part about the Olives Branch is we're a 1 to 3 year program. We
Mm.
we ask for a 1 year commitment, and I'll tell you right now, and I'm sure everybody that's listening is probably going, "Whoa,
Yeah,
right,
long time, guy.
1 year."
Yeah.
But when we really look at it, when I blow all the smoke off everything and really look at how long is a year, right, and who gets a year
Yeah.
to really work on themselves and find the pieces that are jagged, right? And start to make that puzzle fit a little better. And we don't have another part of our facility. I work with an absolutely beautiful team. The empathy is through the roof. The desire to help people is through the roof. The professionalism is through the roof. Like I've been so blessed, Robert, with such an amazing team. So
Mhm.
one thing that we don't offer where a regular full out treatment center does
Mhm.
is the in-house counseling. We do one-on-one, don't get me wrong with that. I mean, we're there.
Yeah.
But this is where our community resources come into hand
Right.
is we've we're in tight with different pieces of the community, and we work with a counseling organization that gladly takes our clients on, right, and to help them continue to walk through the struggles that got them there to begin with, right, and
Yes.
start digging into that. But we do a lot of like right in house, we do a lot of CBT, and we'll talk more about that later too, because there's a unique blend, and this is what I loved about reading your book and just about learning more about yourself even is that unique blend of talk therapy with also digging in,
Mhm.
right? I can talk about it, but what are we really talking about and what can we do with it? So we're like the prep
Right.
station. Yeah, we're like the prep cooks for the counseling,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
It's
But
okay.
on both ends, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is really important to highlight because there are lots of treatment centers out there, and that's a different topic, I guess, how you find the right one for you. But when somebody goes through a big transformation like that, first of all, getting ready to do a transformation like that, it's a
Mhm.
big thing. And so helping with structure to organize some things, in the person's life so they can kind of get themselves ready to do this transition, this big transformation, that's really important. Then they go do their transformation, there's treatment center, which may be 30, 60, 90 days kind of thing, was sort of standard. But then where do they go after that? And that's the scary thing, because if people leave an addiction center and like 30 days, we know from 50 years of research or something like that, that patterns start to set in after about 3 weeks. You do the same pattern for 3 weeks, you're going to have those neural pathways are pretty much, they're fairly set. You got a new habit now. And then once so then for some treatment centers, you're done after 30 days and then see you later. You're about, or you get really accustomed in there for 90 days if you're lucky, and then from there, what do you do, right? Like, where do you go? You just go back into like chaos again.
Yeah.
That is a recipe, I think, for relapse, but for things to go really sideways for people. So knowing that you have, Olive's Branch as an example of a place where you can, be connected, almost like chauffeured here, you have this warm place to be with a community of people that are in the same boat, right?
Mhm.
And you can support each other. That's a really nice place. And then at that point, a year or 2, 3 years is um, wonderful. I'm sure it's not a fit for everybody, but for the people that it is a good fit for, what a gift to have that place that what your life's going to be like for the next 1 to 3 years. That is such a gift. And then you can focus on, building yourself and repairing and releasing and then eventually making that move. So I'm glad that you guys exist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it is, like I said, that whole pre and post. So, and here's the other ticket is you don't even have to go to treatment. If
Yeah.
it turns out that what you're getting from your stay, right, with the
Yeah.
olives branch and being able to see that transformation within your life and decision making and feeling and everything, the whole gamut, right? Let's just keep working with that. There's no pressure to do anything except first and foremost stay clean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And but what a great opportunity it is for folks to not only get into that habit of not using,
Mhm.
but to start integrating into, because we do, nooner meetings every 5 days a week as well.
What's a nooner meeting?
So nooner is lunchtime
At
12-step
lunch?
fellowship meeting.
Okay. Okay.
So, but that's a good opportunity to integrate back into being around people while I'm clean, right?
Hmm.
Sober, and being able to do that with other clean and sober companions so I don't feel alone, right?
Yes.
Talked a lot about fear earlier already, and that's such a huge piece of this whole deal is, man, like I'm just scared to walk into life. So to be able to do that in a not only a structured environment but a community-based environment,
Hmm.
and to be able to walk through a lot of all these new things
Hmm.
with your peers, right? And I'm not going to say for a second that or try to portray some beautiful heaven that nobody ever argues or has disappointments, right?
Sure. Well, it's
But what
life.
do we it's life, and what do we do with our own families, our own blood families? Who argues best with your siblings other than you and your siblings?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah, things happen, but it's an opportunity for people to learn, throughout the duration of their stay. They get to, we start to work with them on their goals, on their aspirations. We've had people come in, stay with us for the full term, start working on education pieces that they needed and wanted in order to move on, right? And they completed that, right? Like we've got success stories that just, I mean, blow my mind
Yes.
because there's the proof.
Yes.
There's the experience and the proof
Yes.
that this can work for anybody,
Yes.
anybody, anywhere, if we're willing to do the work, right?
Amazing. And yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, and to have have the resources available and the people that are willing to walk with you through it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
That's a big deal. It's a big deal for people, I think, that like when you're living for a long period of time with people, you get to know that so they're the support system there that's there for you. Like I do really quick work with people. We could start and finish in 6 days, and I'm a person you can be, it's amazing. I'm really blessed to be able to do that. However, there are limitations to what I can do with somebody. Like I don't know. I can't teach somebody what, 60 days, you might have a trigger that, came out of nowhere and we didn't like it's something we can't predict. And like, how do you deal with that? Right. So I can encourage and make suggestions for somebody as to how they can handle that and based upon their story. But to be able to go like right into the community and say, hey, Chad, I had an urge there, can you like come over and help me? And I think in generally speaking, in the AA community, whatever that might be, AA or NA or it doesn't matter, but the anonymous communities, one of my favorite types of support. I think you could call somebody, your sponsor, at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, hey, I'm thinking about doing something stupid,
Mhm.
and they'll be like, well, where are you? I'll be right there, and I really get that from people. So the community thing is not to be underestimated. It is very critical that you're in the right spot with the right people and dealing with
Right.
things in real time.
Yeah. I think that just what you had said there too speaks volumes to what you had said earlier, right? About we're not meant to be isolated people.
Yeah.
We're not. We're meant to be around people, and I mean, whether in recovery or just in general life, people that haven't experienced active addiction or addiction of any sort, having a network of folks, of people in my life, I got a far better chance at learning how to get through life. Far better chance because there's more perspectives than just this guy.
Yeah, yeah, and you're open at this point, and you hear people's stories, and then you're like, I'm not alone here, and it's really powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I've done
Yeah.
some group work, and I love that. And I just want to touch. There's one more thing about the study or the survey that I think is really great, because knowing that Olive Branch, you're based within the 12-step fundamentals here, structure. People are, and again, not for everybody, but for those people, and according to this, is about 50% of people it was really good for. And some of the reasons that people stayed in recovery is that they're attending their regular AA meetings. Another one said, and these are literally quotes that people have written down. So these are word for word from real people. The 12 steps of AA and NA are keeping me in recovery. Another said, using the 12 steps and reliance on my higher power is a great way to live. The joy and contentment I achieved through living a spiritual life based on the principles of AA and working the 12 steps is something I didn't believe was possible. And
Mhm.
then I feel that the greatest factor keeping me sober is that I have God in my life. Okay, so for those that really would resonate with that, there is worth checking it out for sure. And I want to ask you about some of these myths. We sort of dangled this carrot about these myths in recovery, and I'm curious from your perspective, like what's out there that people think is one way, but really it's not.
Yeah. So, and I thought about this before too. And there's so many different ones, but one that just really jumped into my head actually was yesterday, and it was refreshed in my head just due to a reading that I was going through. And but talking about relapse is a part of recovery,
Hmm.
and I don't believe that's the truth.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
I I believe that it's unfortunate that it is a part of many people's recovery, and there's no shame in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Yep.
zero shame,
Yep. Yep.
right? None, because that's another myth that I'll kind of touch on in a minute here too.
It's
But
all information.
yeah, right. But it doesn't have to. So relapse doesn't have to be a part of a person's recovery, and the reason that I get to say that is, and I know my wife won't be upset with me when I throw her out there too, but she got clean and she didn't relapse, right?
Mm.
Many years ago. I know a lot of people that I've met throughout my journey that have got clean and they didn't relapse because I mean, start to learn these different tools and we get in tune with ourselves internally and start fixing what's broken. and we have a far better chance at not having to pick up again. Substances. I can pick up a bad attitude in a heartbeat sometimes, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Well, that's
but yeah,
good.
just these whole life changes.
That's that's really important. You know that people know that it's not necessary. It's not a destiny. You know, if you go into treatment, I'm going to relapse. It does happen for
Hmm.
people. It's
Absolutely.
part of the journey for some people.
Uh-huh.
I always say it's information. Whatever happens is information, and then we'll know what that trigger was and work through that after. I think somewhere it depends on where you're going for your treatment and stuff, but and where you're the resources in place can really help with that part of things where you don't there it doesn't have to be part of a journey. So I like that.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing that. Anything else
Yeah.
pop up for you in terms of things that people like would need to know about that?
So here's one for your listeners that if anybody is listening that's thinking about the possibility of treatment for yourself, or just this whole getting into recovery, but specifically through the use of facility, whether it's a treatment facility, sober living facility. Another big myth, and I just want to throw this one out there, is that facilities are like jail. I'll tell you, they're not. I think what I believe and where that comes from is I go back to talked a little bit earlier about structure,
Mm,
and structure can really seem like jail, right?
right.
Having somebody else laying out, a healthy way of living, a different way of living
Yeah.
that isn't my way of living, seems like jail because I
Yeah.
lose all control now. Now I got to listen to you. What's up with that, right?
Right.
Well, only thing I'm not doing is wearing shackles, but I still have to follow everything that you say. I mean, it's yeah, it. I think where that myth comes from is more directed towards people that are coming into recovery because they're the ones that have got to show up and start doing that whole structured living, right? Changing their routines and doing things differently. And it can really seem like jail. It can seem like a dictatorship. It can seem like
Mm,
all of these negative aspects. However, once you actually step into it and start having your own experience with the changes, I'm a hip pocket experience guy, Robert. That you talked about core values earlier,
yeah.
and absolutely my core values, they were instilled in me and grew from a little kid with all of those negative experiences that just gave proof to that core value. So once I could understand that, I could take a look at how much BS there was in where that core value come from, because I didn't ask for it, it was given to me, right? And then my interpretation of life just created proof for it. So now I need hip pocket experiences for new values in my life. Every time I experience something new that has a positive addition to the framework of my life, that's a hip pocket experience. Because go back to the fear thing now. Well, there's no way I can do this now. I can't get through this. Oh,
Yes.
wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Yes.
Yeah, I can. I got experience that tells me I can. I'm just
You're
scared.
talking about the coin, right? And is that part of it?
Oh, just no, like even just that like really paying attention to every new experience that I have. That's my new proof is what I find, right? For
Nice.
'cause I want to change my belief system. I want to change be able to stand firm for those values that I actually had but couldn't. And so anytime that I get to do that, if I really pay
Oh,
attention to the outcome, it's like, okay, I just proved that I could do this. I made a
yeah.
change in my life. I feel it. This is my proof that I can change this belief, right?
Oh,
So,
I love that.
um,
And for um in changing behavior, there's a consciousness has to see that there's been a change. That's a
yeah,
very important thing, right? Like you don't really realize like let's say you fell off a slide when you were a kid and then you have a fear of heights, right?
uh-huh,
And then like I'm never gonna go on that. They terrify you, and then you have your own kid, and then they want to go to the park, and you're like, well, I can't deny my kid the park, so let's go to the
yeah,
park. And then you go to the same slide, and then you're like, oh, it's like up to here on me. Well, that's not scary. And then all of a sudden it's different. So you have that nervous system has the response going, hey, that's things are different now. So I like
uh-huh,
what you're saying, like really, really sort of setting in the reality that things have changed for me. And that's a
uh-huh,
big deal because I think for a lot of people, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that there's like a before recovery and then an after, or it's like during recovery period for people, and they feel like there's sort of two different people. I know that who I am now versus who I was when I was hanging upside down from a subway system drinking a beer in public. Like that's not me today. Like I got
Right.
kids and I'm very different, right? So, but to really realize that we can change like that, whoever needs this right now to know that anybody can change,
Anybody.
right? It doesn't matter how old you are. Like you can always teach the old dog new tricks, and you can be really young too. And anywhere in between, you can learn new things. We are literally wired to change. To neuroplasticity, it's called. So I love that
Yeah.
you do that. Remind yourself that this is a new experience, and you build those up and build those up and build those up. Thank you very much for sharing that. It's really helpful.
No, no, you bet. And it is. I mean, that changes for anybody, and that's the beautiful thing. I haven't been in the profession for an extremely long period of time, right, in this field. But even before I got into the field, I got to witness, right, not
Mm.
just about my own transformation, but I've been able to witness people from all walks of life, all ages, all ethnic backgrounds, anywhere. Like there's no discrimination when it comes to recovery.
Yes.
So just like there's no discrimination when it comes to active addiction. I mean, this that can find anybody that's down and out, right? So
Um,
yeah,
that's wonderful. Is there any other ones that pop out to you that you would want to share with people? Any myths? I
um,
mean, these are great already.
I guess one more that really jumps out, but you already sort of touched base, so I don't want to wear it out too much. But just that whole idea of addiction being a moral decision, right? It's
Talk about that. Yeah.
yeah, like I mean, I have too, like you had said, I've yet to meet anybody that thought, geez, you know what? Fireman would be really cool, but I think I want to be an addict. I really
Yes.
want to shoot to be an addict, right?
Yes. Yes.
Haven't met that person yet. And it's about life experience and um I mean, talk about tools to get through life and if I didn't have the tools taught to me in early life, how am I expected
Mm-hmm.
to have tools today, right?
Yes.
We end up, you talk to anybody in active addiction, just end up grabbing, or in recovery, right? Or in addiction right now, grab at whatever we can, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
about survival mode
Yes.
and doing whatever's necessary, even if it goes against that value that I have deep inside,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
I'm going to grasp it at life first and that whole stress response, right?
Yes.
Cortisol flying in my body and in my brain my whole life. So why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't I grasp and grab at anything to help calm that down?
Yeah, you're talking about a very natural nervous system response to addiction. And I'm glad we're talking
Yeah.
about it. And I will spend a minute here because it is out there. There is a myth out there. There is a sense that, well, why doesn't he or she just choose to do something else, right? That's a dumb decision. And unless you've been in the place of this nervous system, you don't quite get it. So I'm going to pop this up on the screen for people to see this. But there's three different neurological states that our nervous system can be in. So we've got in the bottom zone, we've got our green zone. This is like social engagement. It's called. It's a really calm state, peaceful, grounded. This is where we want to be. This is where people are probably when they're in their meetings after, like, say, 6 months or something like that, and like we're good. Like we're feeling pretty good. We have that support. You can still have a little bit of disturbance in that green zone. So there's like a black line that kind of goes like a bell, and there's a little bit of disturbance in the green zone, and you can still handle a bit and be okay. And then there's the yellow zone. This is the fight or flight that most people have heard of. In that yellow zone, we're running from worry and concern all the way up to panic attacks and frustration all the way up to rage responses. And that, but there's still this sense of I can handle it. So the green zone is your prefrontal cortex. You're fully in control. The yellow zone is your limbic system, and that part there is like you're still sort of in control, but you're less in control. And then there's this imaginary dotted line that kind of, when the stress is too big and we can't handle it with the resources we have now, we go into that life or death situation. This is absolute. And when you are drowning, right? People have heard of this. If you're taking swimming lessons, that I was taught in swimming lessons, I was taught that if I need to go rescue somebody, first thing you do, you punch them in the face and knock them out. Why? Because the stress response for that person is to climb on you so that they can have literally like what 5 more seconds of air. But
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if you were the most important person in their life, they will climb on you because in that moment they are not in their set. They don't know who they are. They just need that. They know that they need to be rescued by something. And that is when we hit that point. This is past depression, even right near the almost top, almost the worst state that our nervous system can be in, the most overwhelmed is this pull the lever. And it could be alcohol, it could be cocaine, it could be sex, it could be gambling, it could be working too much, it could be exercising too. It doesn't matter what it is. You're going to pull this lever, and then you have that moment of relief. I'm okay now, right? You've put out the fire. But then you realize, well, I just toasted everything in my life because of that. And then the shame kicks in. Like sometimes it could be the next second or 3 days later, but at some point in time, the shame's going to kick in and then take you back down the rest of the cycle. But I just wanted to share that because I think that's really important. That my perspective, this is not a choice for people. This is a unconscious action that people do. If you can stay close to that yellow zone, green zone, this is the best scenario. If you're in the green zone, then you can make much better choices. So I really appreciate that. And I think the people around you can really help to keep you there grounded and in that social engagement system. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I want to transition a little bit here at Olive's Branch, but from the staff that work there. Right, you said they're really compassionate and empathetic, and I really appreciate that. But I'm also curious about you, like what's it like to work there? What's it like to hear stories from people, day in, day out? And what's the toll on the staff when working in one of these in Olive's Branch, for example? How do staff members deal with it, stress?
So, and this is where I chime back into having an incredible team. Yeah. Uh, working in the helping field can be taxing, right? You can have some pretty heavy days. One thing that we really strive for as a team, and we're a small team, right? But one thing that we really strive for is uh, is working together. Like, well, I can't even find the words right now, but that it's extremely important for myself. I've been in different, supervisory positions before, management stuff like that. And I've followed a lot of management and supervisors, obviously my whole working career, right? In different areas. And to be able to see the difference on how that team works together, how they pull together, that's such a huge make or break with how the day plays out, how the week plays out, how the help to that we're offering plays out, right? So yeah, we hook in on a regular basis. We're a tight team. Everybody ends up, has their own outlet professionally as well,
Mm.
because we understand what it means to have a healthy mind and spirit ourselves, right? If my chances of helping somebody else are going to be far greater if I'm doing well myself, right?
Yeah.
I can't offer wellness to anybody if I'm a mess, if I'm sick, if I'm falling apart. So yeah, we really pull together on that, make decisions together. Uh, um, I'm not a manager I'm not an iron fist kind of guy, right? If we need to be able to find the right answers together,
Yes.
right? And because what I found when we do that, then it's a solid answer. It's a solid solution, and it's one that everybody's involved with, and it holds more water, and there's a far better positive outcome in the end,
That
right?
makes a lot of sense. And I mean, literally, it sounds like you're practicing what you're preaching, for that, it's community approach.
Uh-huh.
And maybe not everybody's in recovery, but maybe most people or half people are kind of, I think that's I'm not going to say that, but it could be. And I think that you're sinking into that community engagement, involvement,
Mhm.
response. I think is really 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 great. And I'm curious for you, like what about for you, Chad? Like what's something that you do personally to manage mental health or stress in your life? How do you do it?
How do I do it? I'm all better, Robert. I'm all better. No,
Yeah. What's your
yeah,
secrets?
yeah. There you go.
Yeah, but how do you handle? Because I know life is going to present challenges to you, and I think you already mentioned that you do your meetings and stuff like that. But is there anything else
Yeah,
that you do that's different that you would share with audience members tuning in?
yeah. So what I have done, I mean, I've got into some side counseling myself, like to get, personal counseling, just
Hmm.
to have that outlet. And I think a very important part of that for me is a completely neutral outlet. So it's not my brothers and sisters and family in recovery. It's not my biological family. It's not my partner. And that's helped a lot, right? When I've been faced with some big struggles. And to be totally honest, and I got a lady that I've known for a long time. She used to snort at me when I would share sometimes because it was like, here's Chad again, all rainbows and sunshine kind of guy, right? And it's not, life isn't rainbows and
Right.
sunshine. I'll tell you that right now.
No unicorns under your table.
No, no,
Yeah.
not a one. However, the gift that I'm so grateful for is to be able to look at the positive in every negative. Like
Mm.
I've learned the most out of the biggest struggles that I've gone through.
Yes.
Uh, the easy stuff, it just blows past me, right? It's like, oh yeah, there's another win, another bonus. I don't even think about it
Yeah.
sometimes. It's just so natural to flow through it. But when it comes to some of these big hits in life, I have a really solid connection with people. And that's why I really love the way you put that earlier again about we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be isolated. That network of like-minded, not just a network of people, a network of like-minded people, ones that if I'm looking for a solution, I'm not going to a problem maker, right?
Right.
I'm going
Yes.
to go to a solution-focused people and really humble up and say like, man, I don't know how to get through this one. I'm
Uh,
struggling, whatever that looks like, right? We talked about the routine bit too and the structure. That's been a huge piece of my life, my recovery. I say
hmm.
recovery, but it's, uh, it's my life today, right? I live
Yes.
life differently than what I once did. And a huge piece of that is I connect first thing in the morning and I get grounded first thing in the morning. First thing, right?
Yes.
I've got a pattern of things that I do. And I said earlier too, like I'm not a religious guy, but
Mhm.
I believe in a healthy spirit. And I've got my own little routines, right, to keep my spirit healthy. I've learned to call myself out
Uh,
when I'm not feeling very spiritual.
uh-huh.
I call myself out because
What do you
the
say to you?
more
What do you say to your what?
it's not even to me. I call myself out and I'll tell somebody, right? One of
Hey.
my supports, my sponsor, my partner, one of my other networks folks, one of the folks at work, right? One of my team members. It'll be like, hey, tell you what, this is where my head's at. I'm feeling a little shoddy today,
Oh,
right? And I don't
thanks.
want to be here. So not that I don't want to
Yeah.
be I don't want to be in
Yeah.
this place because
Yeah.
I've had enough hip pocket experiences
Yeah.
to tell me I don't need to be in this place,
Yes.
right? So I do my best, right? And when I say this one, I don't mean it as a sweep things under the carpet one because I can do that too if I'm
Hmm.
not careful. I am human. I'm
Yes.
absolutely
Yes.
100% human. I try and do my best not to use that as a scapegoat comment
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
to get away with things, right? I'm only human,
Yeah.
right? I can do that again and get away with it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, you know what, I find it's extremely important not to plug things down deep because I
Mhm.
understand what that's like when you get full,
Yeah.
and I don't want to get full again, right? Something that I'm actually looking into to doing is for the whole team, myself and
Mm-hmm.
the whole team, and as individuals, is get involved with clinical supervision. Again, we're not a treatment facility, but I think really in the helping field, man, it's good to have that neutral voice, that neutral headspace, the experience, the you know,
Mm-hmm.
the helpful guidance, right?
Yeah.
So
I love all of that. Thank you for sharing that. And then, I think probably those tuning in are going to be probably listening and seeing how that might apply to them. So I'm wondering if there's a piece of advice that you'd share, or resources that you'd share for somebody that's either themselves or facing addiction, or they have a loved one that's facing addiction, or they're newly in recovery, and it's kind of a brand new world for them, and it might be scary. Like, what advice would you give them?
uh, that's no, three different really good
And
pieces. I mean,
sorry.
so that's all right. That's okay. Tighten up the headgear and those shoulder straps and hold on for this one. But yeah, I guess I mean I would start with the family. Family with somebody in addiction, uh, um, and so I'm not a real advice giver, but I'll share the experience that I've had. Um, don't enable the ones that you love.
Mm,
My and my mom, I'm going to throw her out here too, and we've been able to create a really good bond over
yeah.
my years in recovery. But that whole phrase, "I could just love you to death."
Uh-huh.
Well, I'll tell you what, you can, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. That enabling. There's at some point in time she needed to let me go,
Oh,
and I've
yeah.
been able to take that experience and do it myself with my own kids, right? Because you got a sick dad here that handed some things down, right? And but being able to do that, because I can do that with love, care, and attention, and be authentic. I'm gonna
Right.
love you no matter what, Carl Rogers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unconditional positive regard. I use that with my kids, right?
Yes.
I use that with family members, with anybody and everybody. But you can use that with your family members as well. Just because they can't do anything to strike away my love for them doesn't mean I need to help them hurt or eventually kill themselves with active addiction. Right?
Well, it is such an important topic. It's such an important thing for people to hear, that you can unconditionally love somebody, but you can still have boundaries with them. Like, you don't, like, this is not okay. I love you, but I also don't love that you're doing this to me. I
Yeah,
love you regardless. Don't like the behavior.
yeah,
And I think that's really powerful. Wow.
yeah. It's I don't know, it was a huge one for me. Like honesty is the how many times we hear that growing up, right? Honesty is the best policy. It's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Honesty is going to get me into trouble. Well, Chad, if you didn't do bad
Yeah.
things, you wouldn't get into trouble. Okay.
Right.
So, but I can be honest with people. I will love you, but I'm honest. I'm going to be honest with you,
Yeah.
right?
It's beautiful.
Um, yeah. So that's a big one for the family aspect. I mean, without getting into a whole
Hmm.
bunch of detail, people that are new trying to get in to recovery touched real quick on this earlier about that digging a hole. Um, we don't have to keep digging.
Mm.
Right? One thing that I've learned, and again, I believe fully that because recovery is available to anybody, anywhere, age, race, sexual identity, creed, religion, or lack of religion. It's available to everybody.
Yes.
Everybody also has their own definition of what hell looks like.
Hmm.
If you've reached that, if you've reached that desperate part, that's yours. That's your hell, and take it and run for the solution with it because it's there and it's available, right?
Um,
I don't have to be comparing myself to anybody. If it's hitting hard, it's hitting hard, and and I'll throw this one out too
yeah.
because something that's real big that I found a very common denominator with a lot of people in recovery in active addiction, and I did the same thing. I hated myself when I got here for a lot of those years, all the guilt, the shame, the feeling weak, the in um, the unworthiness, the incapable pieces, all of that stuff that goes with it. I had a guy ask me one time after a meeting, and I had just finished ripping myself apart. He asked me, says, "Where are you right now?" I said, "I'm at a meeting." And again, I said a little more
Yeah.
colorful than that. And this is what I would love for every listener to be able to hear for this moment. If you're even listening to this, it means to me that you're looking for a different direction. If you think for a second about doing something different with your life to get healthy, listen to this. This gentleman told me, if you're here, you cannot tell me that you don't love yourself just a little bit. And man, it's if you're
Huge.
here, you love yourself enough to be here. So let's grow on that.
Yeah.
Let's grow on that.
Thank you. Love that. And then what about the people that are maybe they finished their treatment center and they want to transition into a sober living facility or something like Olives Branch? What would you let, if you can give them one piece of advice or recommendation or suggestion, what would it be?
Be your own advocate. I'm going to really throw that one out there because in the end, we've got all these resources that are available. Um, they're not always made to be in your face available, right? But if you're already in recovery, starting a brand new journey, you're here for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and that's to change how your direction's going to go in your life. I mean, we don't quit destroying our lives for nothing, right? There's a reason behind it, and you've started that journey. So, little catchphrase is stick and stay, right? You're already here. Work with it. Don't give up. I belong to the best club in the world, and it's called the No Matter What Club. No matter what, I'll get through today without picking up. And
That.
we don't have to return. We don't have to return to where we come from, but we
Mm,
can build upon where we want to go. And there are resources out there. Be your advocate. Stay in uh, stay in contact with the direction you want to go, and let people know that they need to help you because we do. The helping profession is there to help, right? And
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and no matter how discouraging things, because this is another piece with treatment centers and sober living facilities and places like this. There's not enough of them, right?
Mm,
That's apparent.
yeah.
That's been big talk for a long, long time. Uh, things are slowly changing as time moves ahead, but with that lack of places to get into, there's still other resources to help you get through the time if you're waiting to get into treatment, right? If you're waiting to get into sober living, there's day programs in just about every community. There's mental health and addictions that we can get into. There's guys like Robert here that might leave his phone number later,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
there's resources out there and available, and if you've already made it this far, don't. There's no need to take a step back. Right? Grab a hold of somebody close and get them to help you keep moving forward.
That's beautiful. I think that's the note to wrap up our show with. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for everything you've shared, Chad. And what we'll do is we'll link, of course, Olives Branch websites in the show notes and my information, of course. And so anybody that's tuning in and you want to know more information about the Olives Branch or me or anything else that you heard on the show here, just let us know. Send me a message, comment on the link. If you watch this on YouTube, comment on in the comments and ask a question. And maybe they'll be around too. Maybe we'll bring you back in and down the line if people have questions that they want to know about, then we'll answer those. So thank you again for sharing what you shared with us today, Chad. And thank you, our dear audience members who have tuned in and you gave us your time today. And as Chad said, that you love yourself at least a little bit enough to be here and to consume this and to take this. And hopefully you've gotten a lot of excellent information and excellent advice and where to go from here. So you're not alone. You have us. There's community around you. People want to help you. You just have to let them know that you need help and don't be shy. The last thing that people want to do is learn about your funeral. That's very, very serious. Give it a shot and try treatment, try, sober living facilities once you're done, and get the help that you need. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.